Hello, and welcome back to LPBW Update, your number one source for the news and analysis the main show won't dare to touch. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on a story that is as dark as it is devastating. What if the biggest drama on Roloff Farms isn't about land, but about the very mind of its patriarch, Matt Roloff? We have been following a series of but deeply troubling insider reports that suggest a shadow campaign of psychological warfare is being waged within the walls of the big house. The goal? To systematically dismantle a man's confidence, his memory, and his very grip on reality. This is the story of the Gaslighting Decline, a terrifying and exclusive theory about Caryn's cruel plot to convince Matt Roloff he's losing his mind, and in doing so, seize control of everything he holds dear. It's a narrative of manipulation so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't looking. But we are. Before we dive into the shocking details of this alleged campaign, a story that will change the way you watch Little People, Big World forever, please do us a huge favor. If you believe in getting to the truth behind the carefully edited scenes, hit that like button right now. Make sure you are subscribed to LPW Update and ring that notification bell because you are not going to want to miss a single update on this developing situation. The information we are about to share is explosive, and your support helps us continue to bring these exclusive reports to light. Now, let's get into it. For seasons now, viewers have been fed a specific narrative about Matt Roloff. He's the tireless creator, the dreamer, but also increasingly a man burdened by the weight of his empire. The feud with his sons over the sale of the north side of the farm has been presented as the primary source of his stress. We've seen him look tired, we've seen him seem distracted, and we've heard him lament the complexities of his life. And right there by his side, through all of it, has been Caryn Chandler. She is portrayed as his rock, his confidant, the steady hand guiding him through the emotional storm of his family falling apart. The show presents her as the voice of reason, the calming presence, the one person Matt can truly count on. But what if that entire portrayal is a carefully constructed lie? What if her role isn't one of support, but of sabotage? Sources close to the farm have begun to whisper about a pattern of behavior, a slow and insidious campaign that started so small it was almost unnoticeable. It began, as these things often do, with the mundane, Matt's keys. A man who has managed a complex, multi-acre business for decades suddenly couldn't keep track of his keys. One day, they wouldn't be on the hook by the door. Matt would be certain he put them there. It's where they've gone for 30 years. He would search, growing more and more frustrated, his mind racing through the last time he saw them. And just as his frustration peaked, Caryn would swoop in with a gentle, almost pitying smile. "Oh, honey," she'd say, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Let me help you look." She would walk over to a completely illogical spot, perhaps a bookshelf behind a row of books, or inside a decorative vase on the mantel. "Here they are," she'd exclaim, holding them up. "You're getting so forgetful. You just can't remember where you put things anymore." The first time it happened, Matt likely brushed it off. A senior moment, he's stressed, he's tired, it happens. But then it happened again and again. His wallet would vanish from the nightstand, only to be found by Caryn in the pocket of a coat he hadn't worn in weeks. His reading glasses would disappear from his desk, and Caryn would discover them in the refrigerator. Each time the discovery was accompanied by a comment, a little verbal jab disguised as loving concern. "Silly boy, what are we going to do with you?" Or, "See, your mind is just so full, you're pushing the little things out." Each incident was a single tiny drop of poison, slowly eroding his confidence in his own mind. He was being conditioned to believe a new truth, that his memory was failing, that he was becoming unreliable. The campaign then escalated. moving from simple objects to the very fabric of his schedule and his reality. According to our insider reports, this is where the manipulation became truly devastating. Matt, a meticulous planner and businessman, lives by his calendar, appointments with contractors, meetings with his financial advisors, even his doctor's visits. Everything is written down. One week, he had a crucial meeting scheduled with a potential partner for a new farm attraction, a deal he was incredibly excited about. He had it in his calendar for Tuesday at 10 a.m. He spoke about it with Caryn the night before, but when Tuesday at 10 a.m. rolled around, Caryn casually asked him what his plans were for the day. The meeting, of course, he'd say, and she would look at him with a confused expression. "Honey, what meeting? That meeting is on Wednesday. Look at your calendar." Matt, flustered, would check, and there it was, in what he thought was his own handwriting. Wednesday, 10 a.m. He'd missed the meeting. He'd lost the opportunity. The professional embarrassment was immense, but the personal damage was worse. He couldn't trust his own hand. He couldn't trust his own planning. Caryn, of course, was there to comfort him. "Don't be so hard on yourself," she would coo, wrapping an arm around him. "It's okay. It happens. Your mind is just playing tricks on you lately. We'll just have to be more careful. That's all. Maybe I should start managing your schedule for you, just to be safe." Do you see the genius of this alleged plot? It's not a direct attack. It's a campaign of 1,000 tiny cuts. It's the denial of shared experiences. Matt would bring up a conversation they'd had just the day before, a decision they had made together about a farm repair. And Caryn would stare at him, her face a perfect mask of innocence and confusion. "Sweetheart, we never talked about that. I think you must have dreamed it. Are you feeling all right?" He would insist, explaining the details of the conversation, where they were standing, what they were wearing. But her denial was absolute, unshakable. Her calm dismissal of his reality was more powerful than any argument he could make. It forced a terrible question into his mind. Is she lying, or am I actually losing it? Am I inventing entire conversations? The doubt was cancer, and she was feeding it daily. While this psychological assault was being waged on Matt, a second front was open: the children. To them, and to everyone else in their orbit, Caryn framed her actions not as manipulation, but as profound, saintly concern. We're told she would have hushed, sad phone calls with Zach or Jeremy. Her tone would be heavy with sorrow. "I don't know what to do," she would sigh into the phone. "I'm so worried about your dad. His memory is really starting to go." She wouldn't just make vague claims. She would provide concrete, fabricated evidence. "He got completely lost on the way to the grocery store yesterday." She'd lie, her voice cracking with emotion. "The one he's been going to for 40 years. He called me so confused he didn't know where he was. I had to go get him. Please don't say anything to him. He's so proud it would just break his heart if he knew I told you." She was building a narrative, brick by painful brick. She was poisoning the well. By getting to the children first, she was pre-framing all of Matt's future actions through the lens of cognitive decline. If Matt got angry about the farm sale negotiations, it wasn't a legitimate business disagreement. It was confusion, an old man lashing out because he couldn't follow the details anymore. If he made a decision they didn't like, Caryn could swoop in and say, "See, I told you, he's not thinking clearly." She was isolating him from his own family, turning his potential allies into worried observers who would second-guess everything he said and did. She was painting herself as the tragic, long-suffering caregiver, the only one strong enough to manage this difficult situation, the only one who truly had Matt's best interests at heart. It was a masterpiece of deception, designed to make her indispensable and him incompetent. But here's the thing about Matt Roloff. Beneath the television persona, beneath the stress and the family drama, is a sharp, calculating businessman. This is a man who turned a patch of land into a nationally recognized tourist destination. He's written books, designed products, and navigated complex business deals his entire life. And while one part of his mind was succumbing to the doubt and confusion Caryn was so carefully planting, another part, the core of who he is, started to notice a pattern, a nagging, persistent feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. The mistakes, the lapses in memory, the bouts of confusion, they all had one common denominator. They only ever seemed to happen when Caryn was the only other witness. When he was with his farmhand, foreman, or his friends, his mind was as sharp as ever. He could recall details of a construction project from 5 years ago. He could negotiate the price of lumber down to the penny. But the moment he was alone with Caryn, the fog would descend, his keys would disappear, his appointments would shift, his conversations would vanish into thin air. His business instincts began to scream that this was not a problem with the hardware of his brain, but with the software of his environment. He started to analyze the situation like a business problem. He began to subtly test his own memory, leaving himself notes, taking pictures of where he left things, and slowly, a horrifying suspicion began to dawn. He wasn't just losing his mind. He was being led to believe he was. The idea was monstrous, a betrayal so profound it was almost unthinkable. This was the woman he loved, the woman he trusted with his life, his future. Could she really be capable of such a cruel and calculated deception? He had to know the truth. He felt like he was going crazy, but the only way to prove his sanity to himself more than anyone was to find irrefutable proof. This, according to our sources, is what led to the most critical turning point in this entire secret war. Matt decided to take a page out of a spy thriller. He needed a witness who couldn't be manipulated, a witness who couldn't be lied to, a witness who had a perfect memory. He needed a camera. He went online and ordered a small, high-definition nanny cam. It was tiny, easily concealable, and recorded crystal clear video and audio. He brought it home, and with a heart heavy with a sickening mixture of dread and determination, he set it up in the main living room, concealing it on a high shelf among other knickknacks, its lens perfectly positioned to see the front door, the key hook, the coffee table, and the main seating area. He needed a cover story, of course. He couldn't let Caryn know its true purpose. He presented it to her as a simple security upgrade. You know, with all the attention on the farm, I just think it would be a good idea to have a camera in here, he said, affecting a casual tone, just for security, in case anyone ever gets onto the property. Caryn's reaction was exactly what he both hoped for and feared. She didn't question it. She didn't seem suspicious. Instead, she was enthusiastically supportive. "Oh, honey, that's such a brilliant idea," she reportedly said, smiling warmly. "You can never be too safe. It'll give us both peace of mind." Her easy acceptance was a chilling confirmation of her belief that she had nothing to hide, that her control over his reality was so complete that a simple camera posed no threat. She had no idea that the camera wasn't there to watch for intruders from the outside. It was there to watch for the enemy within. The camera was now active, a silent, unblinking eye in the heart of their home. Matt went about his days, pretending everything was normal. But inside, he was a wreck. Every time he misplaced something, every time Caryn corrected his memory of an event, a silent war raged within him. Was this it? Was this another manufactured incident? Or was he truly just being forgetful this time? He had to wait. He needed to let the camera collect enough data to capture a full week of their life together. That week, our sources say, was one of the most confusing and mentally taxing of Matt Roloff's life. There were several small incidents, a misplaced TV remote, a forgotten promise to call someone back, each one chipping away at his resolve. Caryn's performance was flawless. Her concern seemed so genuine, her patience so endless. Matt started to doubt himself again. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was just a paranoid old man, inventing a conspiracy to avoid facing the difficult truth of his own mental decline. Then came the incident that would change everything. The smoking gun. It was a Thursday morning. Matt was supposed to drive into Portland for a specialist appointment, a routine checkup for his dwarfism-related health issues. He was ready to go, but his truck keys, which he knew with absolute certainty he had placed on the hook the night before, were gone. The frantic search began, a ritual that had become sickeningly familiar. He checked his pockets, the kitchen counters, and the bedroom. Caryn joined the search, her face a mask of supportive concern. "They have to be here somewhere, honey. Just relax and think," she said soothingly. They searched for nearly half an hour. Matt was on the verge of canceling his appointment. He felt the familiar wave of frustration and self-doubt wash over him. Then Caryn had a sudden epiphany. "Wait a minute," she said, her eyes lighting up. "You were looking at that old vase your mother gave you last night, weren't you? Talking about how dusty it was. I bet you put them in there without even thinking about it." She walked over to the decorative vase on the mantelpiece, the exact same vase she had used before. She reached inside, and like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, she produced the missing keys. She held them up, a triumphant yet pitying smile on her face. "See," she said, her voice soft and patronizing, "you just can't remember where you put things anymore. It's a good thing you have me to help you find them." That evening, after Caryn had gone to bed, Matt Roloff sat down at his computer. His hands were trembling. He felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. This was the moment of truth. He took a deep breath, plugged the memory card from the hidden camera into his computer, and clicked on the first video file from the night before. He fast-forwarded through the footage of them watching TV, of him getting up and hanging his keys on the hook by the door. He watched himself turn off the lights and head to bed. The living room was dark and silent for hours. Then, at 2:17 a.m., a figure emerged from the hallway. It was Caryn. She moved silently through the dark room, a ghost in her own home. She wasn't sleepwalking. Her movements were calm, deliberate, and purposeful. He watched in absolute horror as the camera captured her walking directly to the key hook. She paused, looked back toward the bedroom to ensure he was asleep, and then calmly took his truck keys off the hook. She didn't hesitate. She walked directly to the mantelpiece, reached into the decorative vase, and dropped the keys inside. Then she turned and walked back to the bedroom as if nothing had happened. Matt felt the air leave his lungs. He rewound the footage and watched it again. And again, there was no ambiguity. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a cold, calculated act of sabotage. He then skipped ahead to the footage from that morning. He watched the scene play out from the camera's objective perspective. He saw his own frantic searching, his visible frustration. He saw Caryn watching him, her face a carefully composed portrait of sympathy. He saw her feign her sudden realization, her walk to the vase, and her triumphant discovery. He saw her patronizing smile and heard her condescending words, "You just can't remember where you put things anymore." The camera provided irrefutable, soul-crushing proof. It wasn't his mind that was broken. It was the trust he had placed in this woman. The entire foundation of his life with her was a lie. Her concern was a weapon. Her help was a trap. Every "oh honey," every gentle touch, every sad sigh to his children was part of a monstrous, calculated campaign to make him doubt his own sanity. It was never about helping him. It was about convincing him he was broken so she could take everything. The goal wasn't just control of the farm, it was control of his very being. The violation was absolute. The betrayal was a wound deeper than any physical ailment. Matt Roloff now knew the truth. He wasn't losing his mind. He was in a fight for it. The gaslighting decline was real, but it wasn't his. It was hers. And the reckoning was about to begin. The silence of the house was a roar in Matt Roloff's ears. The glow of the computer screen cast a pale, sickly light on his face, illuminating a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He was no longer watching a video. He was staring into the abyss of a betrayal so deep it threatened to swallow him whole. Every seemingly innocent moment with Caryn over the past few years began to flicker through his mind, not as memories, but as exhibits in a long, secret trial where he had been the unknowing defendant. Each time she'd found his lost glasses, each canceled appointment she'd blamed on his failing memory, each conversation she'd denied having, it was all evidence. He wasn't just being manipulated. His entire reality had been a meticulously crafted prison, and she was the warden, the architect, and the sole key holder. The feeling that washed over him wasn't just anger. It was a cold, terrifying clarity. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had clouded his mind for so long was suddenly gone, burned away by the harsh digital truth on the screen. He saw the woman he loved, the woman he planned to spend the rest of his life with, as a stranger, a predator who had been patiently, methodically breaking him down piece by piece to get what she wanted. The next morning was the hardest performance of his life. When Caryn came into the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune, her face bright with a loving smile, Matt had to force himself not to physically recoil. He had to meet her kiss, to accept the coffee she poured for him, to act like the same slightly confused, forgetful man he had been the day before. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, patting his shoulder. "Did you sleep well?" Inside, Matt was screaming. He wanted to throw the laptop on the table and force her to watch herself, to see the cold, calculating thief she became in the dead of night. But he couldn't. He was a businessman, a strategist. A premature confrontation would only lead to denial, to her twisting the story, to her claiming he was the one being paranoid, that he was delusional in seeing things. The camera footage was proof, yes, but she would find a way to explain it away. She might even claim she was sleepwalking or that she was just tidying up and forgot she'd moved the keys. No, a single piece of evidence wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed to build a case so airtight, so overwhelmingly damning that not even she, with her masterful manipulation, could escape it. So he smiled back, a hollow, brittle thing. "Slept like a log," he lied. "Though for the life of me, I can't remember what I was dreaming about." He watched her face for any flicker of triumph, and he saw it. A tiny, almost imperceptible gleam in her eyes. It was the look of a puppeteer pleased that the strings were still working perfectly. From that day forward, Matt's life became a secret double existence. On the surface, he was the same old Matt, increasingly dependent on Caryn's help. He would feign confusion, asking her to repeat things, forgetting small tasks she'd asked him to do. He played the part of the man she was trying to create, and with a chilling ease, she slipped even deeper into her role as the saintly caregiver. In reality, Matt was a detective in his own home. He was a prisoner gathering evidence for his own appeal. He didn't just rely on the one nanny cam anymore. Our sources indicate he discreetly installed 2 more cameras. One in the kitchen, hidden inside a faux plant, covering the main calendar on the wall and the drawer where they kept important documents. Another was placed in their home office with a clear view of his desk, his computer, and the filing cabinets. His home was no longer a sanctuary. It was a surveillance state of his own making, a necessary defense against the enemy sleeping in his bed. The new cameras began to pay dividends almost immediately. He captured footage of her going to the large wall calendar in the kitchen late at night. He had a meeting with the pumpkin patch vendor scheduled for a Friday. He had written it down himself and taken a picture of it with his phone for his own private records. The camera recorded Caryn after checking to see if he was asleep, calmly taking an eraser to the calendar and moving the meeting to the following Tuesday. The next day, when Matt mentioned getting ready for the Friday meeting, she directed him to the calendar with that familiar, pitying tone. "Oh, honey, no," she said, pointing. "See, it's next Tuesday. You really need to start paying closer attention when you write things down." Without his own photographic proof, he would have believed her. He would have spiraled into that familiar pit of self-doubt. But now, watching the footage back, he felt a surge of cold fury. He was witnessing the mechanics of her deception in high definition. Another time, he captured something even more insidious. It was a phone call. She was in the office, thinking she was alone. The camera's microphone picked up her side of the conversation. Reportedly with her daughter, her voice was low, conspiratorial. "I know, it's just getting worse and worse," Caryn sighed into the phone. "He's just not all there anymore. No, he has no idea. He thinks he's fine, which is the saddest part. Well, the plan is to talk to the lawyer next month about, making things official, getting the power of attorney. It's not what I want, but I have to be able to protect him and his assets. He'd sign anything for anyone right now. He's that confused. It's for his own good." For his own good, the words echoed in Matt's head. She was packaging her coup as an act of mercy. She wasn't just trying to control the farm. She was positioning herself to gain legal control over his entire life, his finances, his medical decisions, everything. She was planning to erase him as a person and replace him with a legal ward she could control like a trust fund. This was the end game. The vague sense of unease he had felt for years had now crystallized into a clear and present danger. She was moving to checkmate. With this new, horrifying clarity, Matt began to reevaluate everything, especially the catastrophic breakdown of his relationships with Zach and Jeremy. The farm feud had torn his family apart, and he had shouldered much of the blame, believing his sons were being unreasonable, that they didn't appreciate the opportunity he was offering. But now, he started to sift through those bitter memories, searching for Caryn's fingerprints. He remembered conversations where Caryn would report back to him what Zach had said after a tense meeting. "He's just being entitled, Matt," she would tell him, her arm around his shoulder. "I heard him talking to Tori. He said he deserves the farm and that you owe it to him." But had Zach really said that? Or was that Caryn's translation, twisted just enough to stoke Matt's anger and sense of injustice? He recalled a time when Jeremy had made a financial offer for a piece of the property. Matt had rejected it as insultingly low. But the offer had come through Caryn. Had she presented the numbers accurately, or had she massaged the details, making the offer seem worse than it was, ensuring Matt would refuse it and drive another wedge between himself and his son? He started to see her pattern. She was the gatekeeper of information. She would sit in on his meetings with the boys, and afterwards, she would help him debrief. Her summaries always painted the boys in the worst possible light, highlighting their alleged disrespect and downplaying their valid points. At the same time, she was on the phone with the boys, presenting herself as the sympathetic mediator who was trying her best to manage Matt's increasing stubbornness and confusion. She was playing both sides against the middle, ensuring the family remained fractured and broken. Why? Because a united Roloff family of father and sons working together was a threat to her absolute control. As long as they were fighting, as long as that felt isolated and betrayed by his own children, who would he turn to? Who would be his sole confidant, his only trusted advisor? Her. It was a brilliant sociopathic strategy. She hadn't just inserted herself into the family drama. She had become its primary engine, fanning the flames of discord to clear a path for her own takeover. Matt realized the depth of his isolation. Caryn had done her work too well. If he went to Zach now and said, "Caryn has been manipulating me, she's trying to make me think I'm crazy," what would Zach think? He would think it was proof of what Caryn had been telling him for months, that Dad was losing his grip, that he was becoming paranoid. She had preemptively discredited him to his own children. He couldn't go to Amy either. Their history was too fraught, and bringing this to her would create a storm of "I told you so" that he wasn't ready to handle. He was on an island, and the tide was rising. He knew he couldn't just sit on the evidence forever. Her mention of meeting with a lawyer next month had started a ticking clock. He had to act, but he had to be smarter than he'd ever been in his life. He began to set small traps, tests to confirm what he already knew. One evening, he made a point of leaving his wallet on the kitchen table, right next to a pile of mail. He told Caryn, "I'm leaving my wallet here, so I don't forget it for my breakfast meeting tomorrow." He had no breakfast meeting. The next morning, the wallet was gone. He pretended to panic. "My wallet! It was right here. I know I left it here." Caryn feigned surprise and helped him look. 10 minutes later, she found it in the garage, on top of a stack of old newspapers. "Oh, Matt," she sighed, shaking her head. "You must have carried it out here last night when you were looking for that tool. Your mind is all over the place." He checked the camera footage later. It showed her, just as he suspected, getting up in the middle of the night, taking the wallet from the table, and walking it out to the garage. He had his confirmation, another pristine exhibit for his collection. His next move was his most daring. He knew she was monitoring his communications. He suspected she was checking his phone and his emails, looking for any sign that he was on to her. So he used it against her. He started a draft email on his computer to his financial advisor. He left it open on his screen as if he'd been distracted and walked away. The email read, "Hi, David. I'm getting concerned about my memory lapses lately. Caryn thinks it might be time for me to simplify things and give her durable power of attorney to handle all financial and medical decisions. I'm thinking about it. Can you draw up the paperwork for me to look at? Let's keep this between us for now." It was the bait. He then left the house to run errands on the farm. From a distance, he watched the house. He knew she would take the opportunity to check his computer. He stayed away for 2 hours. When he returned, he checked the hidden camera in the office. The footage was breathtaking. It showed Caryn entering the office, looking around nervously, and then sitting down at his computer. He watched her read the email, and a slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. It was the look of a predator who had just watched its prey walk willingly into a trap. She thought he was finally broken. She thought she had won. She quickly closed the email and deleted it from his drafts to make it look like she'd never seen it. That was the final piece of the puzzle. He had her. He had video evidence of her hiding his belongings. He had audio of her admitting her plan to get power of attorney. He had video of her altering his calendar. And now he had proof of her snooping in a recording of her triumphant reaction to his feigned surrender. He had a complete, undeniable portrait of her psychological abuse and her ultimate goal. The weight of the evidence was staggering, but so was the weight of the task ahead. What was his next move? A dramatic confrontation was tempting, the stuff of movie scenes, to see the look on her face when he played the videos for her. But that felt too small, too personal. This was bigger than just a domestic dispute. This was an attack on his legacy, his family, his very identity. A quiet call to a lawyer seemed more practical, a clinical, legalistic path to dismantling her poor. Or should he call a family meeting? A summit with Zach, Jeremy, Amy, and their spouses. He would lay out the evidence, the whole sordid story, and not only clear his own name, but expose the true source of their family's pain. It would be a painful, explosive reunion, but it might be the only way to heal the wound she had so skillfully inflicted. Sitting alone in his office late that night, surrounded by the screens displaying the secret life within his own home, Matt Roloff finally knew what he had to do. He wasn't the confused old man she had tried to make him. He was Matt Roloff, the builder, the creator, the patriarch. She had tried to tear down his world, but she had made a fatal miscalculation. She had forgotten that he was the one who had built it in the first place. And he was about to remind her and everyone else that what Matt Roloff builds, he can also defend. He picked up his phone. He had a choice to make. Would it be his lawyer or his son? The war for his mind had been won. The war for his family and his farm was just beginning. He chose a family. In the end, after all the calculations and strategic planning, the businessman gave way to the father. His finger didn't dial his lawyer, it dialed his eldest son. The call was short, the tone devoid of its usual weariness, replaced by a steely resolve that Zach hadn't heard in years. "Zach," Matt said, his voice level and clear, "I need you, Jeremy, Tori, and Audrey to come to the big house tomorrow at noon. No questions, just be here. It's about everything." There was a pause on the other end, the sound of a son trying to decipher a cryptic message from a father he barely understood anymore. "Dad, is everything okay?" Zach asked, a note of genuine concern in his voice, the very concern Caryn had weaponized. "It will be," Matt replied and hung up. He then sent the identical message to Jeremy. The pieces were now in motion. The next morning, Matt watched Caryn move about the kitchen. He saw every smile, every touch, every seemingly kind gesture through a new, horrifying lens. He saw the gears turning behind her eyes. When he told her the kids were coming over for a family meeting, she lit up, her face a perfect performance of relieved hope. "Oh, Matt, that's wonderful," she exclaimed, rushing to his side to hug him. "I'm so glad you're finally ready to sit down and clear the air. It's what this family needs." She believed this was her coronation. She thought Matt, weakened and confused, was finally bringing his rebellious sons to heel, perhaps even to announce his decision to step back, to hand the reins of his life over to her. She spent the morning fussing, preparing coffee and snacks, orchestrating the scene of her final triumph. She was the loving partner, the steadying force, preparing to welcome the prodigal sons back into a fold that she now controlled. Noon arrived, and so did the kids. They walked in tentatively, the air thick with years of unspoken resentment and recent bitter arguments. They saw Caryn playing the gracious host and Matt sitting silently in his armchair, observing everything. The small talk was strained, a thin veneer over a chasm of family dysfunction. Finally, Matt stood up. The room fell silent. He didn't look at Caryn. He looked directly at his sons. His voice, when he spoke, was heavy with a pain that went far beyond the arguments over land. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," he began, the words catching Zach and Jeremy completely off guard. "I'm sorry for the things I've said. I'm sorry for not listening. I'm sorry because I let myself believe that my own sons were turning against me. I was wrong. I was a fool. And I let this family get broken up because I couldn't see the truth." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. He then turned his gaze toward Caryn, who was now looking at him with a flicker of confusion, her smile faltering. "For a long time," Matt continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "I've been feeling like I'm losing my mind, forgetting things, getting confused, and I've had a lot of help convincing me that it was true." He picked up a remote control from the table. "And today, I want to show you all why." He pointed the remote at the large television mounted on the wall. He pressed a button, and the screen, which had been displaying a pleasant slideshow of farm photos, flickered to life with a grainy nighttime view of the very living room they were all sitting in. The timestamp in the corner read 2:17 a.m. The room was silent as they watched the ghostly figure of Caryn emerge from the hallway, walk to the key hook, take Matt's keys, and deliberately hide them in the decorative vase. Matt's voice cut through the stunned silence, calm and cold as a coroner's report. "This was last Thursday. This morning I almost missed my doctor's appointment because I couldn't find my keys. The morning Caryn, after helping me search for 30 minutes, had a sudden inspiration to look in this very vase." Caryn shot to her feet, her face a mess of shock and outrage. "Matt, what is this? This is insane. I was tidying up. I must have been half asleep. You can't possibly think." Her voice trailed off as Matt, ignoring her completely, pressed the button again. A new video appeared on the screen. It was the kitchen calendar. They watched as Caryn's hand came into frame, erasing an entry on a Friday and rewriting it on the following Tuesday. "And here we are," Matt narrated, his voice flat, "rescheduling my meeting with the pumpkin vendor without my knowledge, which led to me missing the meeting and almost losing a 30-year business relationship. Another sign of my failing memory." "This is a violation. You've been spying on me in my own home," Caryn shrieked, her performance of the gentle caregiver shattering into a million pieces, revealing the raging fury beneath. Zach and Jeremy were speechless, their faces pale, staring from the screen to Caryn and back again, the tumblers of understanding clicking into place in their minds. All the weird inconsistencies, all the times their dad seemed confused or angry for no reason. It was all starting to make a horrible kind of sense. Matt still didn't look at her. He just pressed the button one more time. This time, there was no video, only audio, the hidden microphone in the office. Caryn's voice filled the room, low and conspiratorial, the audio from her phone call. "The plan is to talk to the lawyer next month about, making things official, getting the power of attorney. It's for his own good." A collective gasp went through the room. Tori put her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. This was no longer about misplaced keys or shifted appointments. This was a confession. This was the motive. It was the sound of a cold, deliberate plot to seize control of their father's life. Caryn's face had drained of all color. She was cornered, exposed, and her only remaining weapon was the one she had always used, gaslighting. "You're twisting my words," she stammered, pointing a trembling finger at Matt. "I was worried about you. I still am. You're not well. Look at what you're doing. This paranoia, this is exactly what I was talking about. I was trying to protect you from yourself." "Protect me?" Matt finally turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw the full, undiluted rage in his eyes. It was the look of a man who had been pushed to the very edge of his own sanity and had fought his way back. "Let me show you one more thing." He pressed the button one last time. The screen showed the office and the footage of Caryn sneaking to his computer, reading the bait email he had left, and the slow, triumphant smile spreading across her face. He narrated the final act. "This was you, 2 days ago, reading an email where I talked about giving you power of attorney. This was your victory lap. You thought I was finally broken. You thought you had won." He turned the television off. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by a strangled sob from Caryn. But it wasn't a sob of remorse. It was the sound of a plan collapsing. Zach finally found his voice, low and shaking with a fury he had never felt before. "All this time, these fights, you were pouring gasoline on the fire." Jeremy just shook his head, staring at the floor, replaying years of conflict in his mind, now tainted with the knowledge that it had all been engineered. Matt took a step toward Caryn. She flinched. His voice was no longer loud, but it carried the weight of a final judgment. "Her concern," he said to his children, but his eyes never left her, "was a campaign to make me doubt my own mind. Her help was a way to convince me I was broken. It was never about love. It was about control. It was about the farm. It was about everything." He then looked directly at her. "Get your things. Get out of my house and get off my farm. A lawyer will be in contact with you regarding the rest." The aftermath was not loud or explosive, but quiet and profoundly sad. After Caryn had scrambled to pack a bag, her face a mask of hateful defiance, and had driven away down the long farm driveway for the last time, the 5 Roloffs were left standing in the living room, a family shattered and now tentatively trying to find the pieces. The apologies came first, Matt to his sons for not trusting them. the sons to their father for not seeing that he was in distress, for believing the narrative that he was just being difficult. For the first time in years, the walls came down. They talked about the negotiations, the miscommunications, the hurt feelings, and saw for the first time a third hand guiding them toward conflict at every turn. It didn't erase the harsh words or the bitter disagreements, but it reframed them. They weren't enemies. They were victims of a common enemy who had lived among them. We can report that in the weeks that followed, Matt Roloff, with the full support of his sons, met with a team of lawyers and financial experts. Every joint account, every business interest, every legal tie that bound him to Caryn Chandler was systematically and ruthlessly severed. The woman who had schemed to gain power of attorney found herself served with legal papers that barred her from even setting foot on the property she had so desperately coveted. The gaslighting decline was over. The great manipulator was gone. And in the quiet that followed her departure, something new began to grow on Roloff Farms. It wasn't pumpkins or a new attraction. It was trust. It was the slow, difficult, but steady rebuilding of a family. The future of the farm, which had once been the source of all of their division, was now the one thing that could bring them back together. With the architect of their pain excised like a cancer, the question was no longer about who would win or lose. For the first time in a very long time, the future of Roloff Farms was back in the hands of the Roloffs, and a new season, both on the farm and in their lives, was about to begin.